afternoon and welcome to Hashtag C Talk. With me today is Amber Asson, a survivor of a brain tumor, which resulted in her having to have emergency surgery. Amber, welcome and thank you for agreeing to share your story with us.
Thank you, Dion.
I want you to start by telling me a little bit about your life before your diagnosis.
Well, my life was average 24, 25. I'm 25 now, average 24-year-old. I am a mother of two. My life was really practically seeing about my kids. When I had my first child, I was still partying. And with my second son, I settled down. I had responsibilities then, so I was out of the party world and I was full-time mom. Right? So I used to see about my kids, go to work, come back home and see about them.
Okay, so tell me a bit about how your life changed once you were diagnosed. How did you find out that you had the tumor?
Well, when I woke in the morning to go to work, because I was working in Port of Spain, so I would get up like 3 in the morning to catch the bus. And when I wake that early, I would instantly get an excruciating pain, and I thought was a migraine. And I had went to work with the headache, and when I had reached on work, I realized the lightings would make the pain even worse. So I remember my coworker at the time, she just shut off all the lights in the office, and that made it bearable. And I just felt an upset stomach, and I ran immediately to the washroom, and I just remember vomiting. And after that, I had gotten my self checked out, and I did the CT scan at San Fernando General Hospital, and I was admitted, and the doctor told me, the scan wasn't ready yet, so I will have to stay up on the ward. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, he came with the scans and he said, "Ma'am, you have a mass in your brain." So I was like, "A mass? Like, what does the mass entails?" He was like, "He's not qualified to tell me anything further, but a team of neurosurgeons will come later on in the morning." And he left me like that. So I was alone at 2 o'clock in the morning with this drastic news. I was emotional. I was crying. I remember calling my sister. Obviously, she didn't understand what I was trying to say over my tears. But eventually, I was like telling her, I have a mass. I'm sure it's a tumor. I'm sure it's cancerous. I'm going to die. My babies are going to grow up alone. And she was like, "All right, you're speeding. Let's take it down. Take it slow. The doctor didn't say it was cancerous, so there is still a chance. So we'll see what the neurosurgeons has to say by morning." And that's how I found out.
Okay, so you said your sister was the first person that you called. How did your mom and other family members take the news?
Well, I didn't speak to them. My sister related the story, the news to them, and I had saw them the next morning. So I'm not sure in the time frame when she had tell them what was their reaction, but no one called me. I just saw everyone in the morning for comfort and moral support. Everybody was smiling who had a little worried look, but they try not to, frighten me with their worry.
Okay, so everybody was there when the team of neurosurgeons came.
Oh, my whole bed was surrounded with cousins and my dad, my mom, my boyfriend, my kids. I know the hospital has a rule, 2 persons per bed, but the nurses were compassionate with my situation and they allowed everyone to stay when the team of neurosurgeons came.
Okay, so walk me through the process when the neurosurgeons came.
Well, they explained what the mass was, and they said that it is a tumor, but the position of it looks like it's a benign meningioma. Right? I immediately went up and looked to see what are the meningiomas about, how are they caused, and then they also told me that it's large, and that the only option I have is to do emergency surgery.
So what is the meningioma?
Yes.
What is it?
It's tissue that forms from the meningenes, right? It's formed from the skull. It's not part of the brain, but it's formed from the skull. So that tissue was growing from the skull and was pushing down on my brain. So that was causing the pressure.
And the headaches and stuff like that you were experiencing?
Yes.
Okay, so after they explained to you the tumor, the cause of it, what was the cause of the treatment? What followed?
Well, I had no other option. It was strict do surgery. My dad was telling me, you should probably get a second opinion. But then my mom was saying, if it is they're saying it's large, go ahead with the
No.
treatment, right? So practically, I was forced because I had no option, I had no choice, and I listened to what the doctors were telling me.
So did your diet have to change? What changed in the time frame from the diagnosis to the surgery?
Well, I stayed in the hospital for a week
Mm-hmm.
before the surgery. I was hooked up to an IV. The IV, I can't recall what is the name of the IV, but it was to reduce the swelling around the brain so that when they go to do the surgery, it wouldn't have as much swelling so that they can get at the tumor
Less
faster.
absorption.
Right? I remember being hooked up to the IV for about 4 weeks and 4 days, sorry. And after the 4 days, I was able to go home, and they sent me home. They was like, be happy, make memories with your children, and see you next Thursday for surgery. So I had a whole week to, kind of go home and prep. At that point in time, I was just studying to make memories. If I had to go out, I wanted my family to remember me being happy.
So the 4 days that you spent in the hospital, what was that like? Being away from the children, did you get to see
Ooh,
them?
that was a challenge. Day one passed, and I was like, okay, Amber, you need this. Stick it out. Day two, the needle started to hurt my arm. I saw visitors. I still had visitors. People were still making me laugh. Day three, I started to miss home. I started to miss my kids. And day four, I had gotten angry with everyone. The neurosurgeons would come and I wouldn't speak to them. The nurses would come and I would refuse to eat. And I was like, I just want to go home. So after that, being in that emotional state, and my doctor realized, okay, I am making the situation worse than it already is. He allowed me to go home and for the week and to come back.
So what are some of the your favorite moments, favorite memories from within a week?
I remember all my family just coming over, and we were just making jokes with each other, remembering past and, just childhood events, and just making everybody laugh. And, spending time with my kids. I made sure I had a book, and I was like writing down stuff that, past events, like when they were born, how did I feel, because one of the risks were I could experience memory loss. So I didn't want to forget anything, especially my two kids.
Did you ever think that maybe, just maybe, you wouldn't have come out of the surgery alive? And how did you deal with things like that?
Yes, I did. But once I started praying, I have never prayed so hard in my life for anything. So once I started to think negative, I remember my pastor and a friend's mother calling me, and she was like saying, pray, remember to pray. And then I remembered a friend sent a nice gospel song, and I would listen to it and listen to the words, and it really had impacted my life. So I started to pray, and I started to believe in what I was praying for. And at that point in time, I felt like a divine intervention. So at that point, I wasn't thinking anything negative. I was like, God is going to see me through.
And what kind of strength did you draw from your family members having them around? Did you ever resent them? Did you ever question God, why me, why this, why now?
Never. Never. My family actually were my strength. When I felt like crying, they would always make me laugh. When I was laughing, there were those who were crying harder than me. For me, like they were in the same situation, and it made me laugh. So I appreciated them for just, being there and giving that support.
Did you explain to your kids what was going on? Or?
They were too small. My son at the time was 7 months.
Okay.
He was breastfeeding at the time. That was like the hardest thing because while doing treatment, he had to stop breastfeeding. And at that moment in the hospital, when he would come and visit, I felt that connection that we had kind of losing. He would more be cling to daddy, daddy all the time. His first words were daddy. When he would come in and visit in the hospital, he didn't want to see me in that state because my head was shaved, banded up, and he didn't really want to stay on me. My daughter, she's 3 now. She was 2.5, about 2 years old at the time. I thought she would have more been the afraid one because she's more aware of what is going on before her. She would say, well, mommy head is shaved and okay, something looks weird with mommy. But shocking enough, my little girl was the bravest. She would climb up on the bed, the hospital bed, and she would come and snuggle with me, and she just really, really comforted me.
Let's backtrack a little bit to the shaving of the head. I know that is symbolic in more ways than one. When they explained to you that you would have to shave your head, how did you take that news, and how long did it take you to come to terms?
Well, they told me I had to shave my head immediately at the diagnosis. Well, I had shoulder length hair, so the week when I went home, my cousins, because they realized that was a big deal for me, so my cousins was like, come now, we just cut off a little bit of your hair so that we will see how you would look. So I gave in to that, and I realized, okay, short hair, I didn't look that bad. But when it was time for the actual shave off the night before the surgery, the nurses allowed someone who I was close to do it. And I chose my boyfriend to do it. And my mom was there, my cousin was there, and I was an emotional wreck. I just remember hearing the shavers going on, and I was crying. I watched my cousin, and she was crying. And my mom was like, what are you crying for? Everything will be all right. So.
And how was that experience for your boyfriend?
Oh, he enjoyed it. He's kind of like that. He makes jokes inappropriately just to make me laugh sometimes. So when everybody's down in a room, he will more be the one to kind of pick up the atmosphere. So he was, even though he was laughing and I was like, now isn't really not a time to laugh, he got serious and he was like my advisor. He was like, you went through way worse than this. This is nothing for you to handle. I have seen you go through battles worse than this. Here is something that could grow back. And that stuck with me. Like after like shaving my head and going through the process, I was like, here is something that does grow back. As long as I come out alive, hair will grow back.
And what would you say has been the most difficult? What was the most difficult part for you during the entire ordeal, from your diagnosis to the surgery?
Losing that connection with my kids, being away from them.
And after the surgery, how long were you in hospital before you were allowed to go home?
I spent a month in recovery. I would have gotten to go home after 3 weeks because after surgery, I was moving around, mobile, and the swelling in my head wasn't going down. So the doctors decided to do a spinal tap. And with that spinal tap, I was unable to like sit and stand, move about. I completely went from 100 to 20. Everybody had to come. I was in diaper. I was being changed. The family had to come and feed me. I literally could not move. It was that bad. So they kept me a whole month. And even like being discharged, I still was unable to sit without getting the headaches because it came back with the spinal tap. And the doctors were like, go home, it will get better, go home, it will get better. So I took the advice. After a month, I got released the day before Mother's Day. So they was like, go home, spend time with your kids, it's Mother's Day. So I went home. I remember rolling out on a wheelchair, lying down in the car till the drive home, and laying on the bed home. And everybody had to do things for me that night. And my kids were there. And the next morning I got up and I was like, okay, Amber, forget the pain. You are a mother and you need to help your kids. So I got up that morning and I bear the pain. And I bear the pain for like half day. And by the time, evening time, all the pain went. I don't know, like it was just, probably just the happy feeling
of being able to do for your kids.
Yeah.
And how long did it take for your life to return to some semblance of normalcy once you were discharged and returned home?
It's a year later and I still do not feel like I am back to normalcy. I have had to change up some of my routines, some things that I like to do. My boyfriend and I do not go on movie dates anymore, and that was our thing, for the fear of the big screen and the lighting, because I had 2 seizures after my surgery, right? And I realized that lights would tend to trigger them off. So I keep myself away from going and watch movie screens, even though, you know, I love to watch movies. I also tend to like not drive at night, just to avoid, you know, the high beams from other vehicle lights. I'm afraid that that will trigger off a seizure.
Is noise also a trigger?
No, but I wouldn't surround myself with noise.
And what about diet? Has your diet changed at all?
I was a lover of Cokes. I have to stay away from caffeine, all caffeine. I can't even go and get a latte. Grapefruit, my tablets. I am on constant medication. I have a routine, 3 tablets a day, just to keep me from having a seizure or to prevent any seizures. So, yeah.
What advice do you have for fellow survivors or people who may have now found out that they have a tumor as well?
My advice to patients, survivors, is that go through the process. It may be hard, it may seem difficult. Seek some kind of spiritual intervention, because you will need a sense of self-being. You cannot go through this alone. You need support. Support from family, be it support from friends. You need support. And go brave. Do not get nervous. Do not shy away from any treatment. Just do what you need to do to make yourself better.
Are you part of a support group or anything like that?
I am in the process of forming a support group called the Trinidad and Tobago Brain Tumor Foundation. Going through this ordeal last year in my life, I needed support that my friends and family could not have given me. I needed to speak to someone who was in like situation to find out what it's going to be like, you know, how the process is and was, and you know, what they got out of it. And I realized Trinidad and Tobago doesn't have any support for any brain tumor patients. During my research, I came across the Trinidad and Tobago Cancer Society, and they give counseling, free counseling if you need any, and that's about it. But there is no support for us, so I have made the initiative to make that change and to start this Trinidad and Tobago Brain Tumor Foundation.
And if persons are interested in contacting you and contacting the foundation, where do we find you?
We have a page on Facebook. Um, you could simply look for Trinidad and Tobago Brain Tumor Foundation, and it will pop up. You can leave a message or you can call, right? Our contact number is on the page as well.
Okay, so what's next for Amber?
My next move is taking my foundation further, helping others, giving others hope, and, being an encouragement to others.
One thing I forgot to ask though, did you suffer any deficiencies after the surgery?
No. Thank God for that. I was told of the risk that I may be paralyzed on my right side, and I came out of that surgery and I had no deficiencies, none at all.
Okay, thank God.
Yeah.
You said the tumor was big. Approximately how big was it? Size of an orange or?
It's the size of a lemon. Yeah.
Okay, did you ask to see it after the surgery?
Actually, I did. My neurosurgeon, she took pictures before they discarded it. I had the pictures, but unfortunately, I lost it. But yeah, it was really something to see and to look at and to marvel. This is what I had in me, and that was like a whole life changing. Just the process of going through something like that. I mean, everybody on the outside, all healthy, you doesn't really stop to look back at life, right? What God has given you, until you reach in that hospital bed and you surround yourself with people who are sick and how much they need and how much they crave for attention. We tend to go about life not thinking about others, but when you reach in that situation, it's like something hits you. Like, what is humanity about?
So it's safe to say that your ordeal encouraged you to have a greater outlook on life, a greater appreciation for life.
Yes.
Okay, well, Amber, again, thanks so much for sharing your story. I wish you Godspeed in all your future endeavors, and I pray that you would continue along the path to full recovery.
Thank you.